Chapter 15 of The Clue of the New Pin by Edgar Wallace. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Yoganand. The Clue of the New Pin. Chapter 15. In the course of his professional duties, Tab Holland had been brought into contact with the master of the Golden Roof on 2 occasions. The first followed a small scandal, which only remotely touched the restaurant. The woman who was the subject of Tab's investigation had dined there at an important date, and once in connection with a dead season topic dealing with the nutritive values of food. He had found the Chinaman reserved to a point of taciturnity, monosyllabic in speech, a most unsatisfactory person. Tab knew nothing about him except that he was a successful Chinaman who had gravitated into the restaurant business. He asked Jacques for enlightenment, well knowing that if the news editor could not satisfy his curiosity, it was because Yealing was altogether uninteresting. Jacques was one of those rarities to whom reference is so frequently made that it might be imagined they were as common as straws in a stable. He was a veritable mine of information. The genius occurred sometimes in newspaper offices. Jacques knew everybody and everybody's wife. He knew why they married. He also knew why stars twinkled and the chemical composition of tears. Quote him a line from any classic, and he would give you its predecessor and that which followed. He knew the dates of all important earthquakes, and was an authority on the Mughal emperors. He could sketch you with equal facility the position of Froissart's Second Corps at Rezonville on August 17, 1870, or the military situation at Thermopylae, and dates. The only serious students of the Megaphone Reference Library were the reporters who went there to confound Jacques. They never succeeded. Yealing? Yes, queer bird. An educated chink. Got a son who was quite a swell scholar by Chinese standards. He ought to make a good story some day. That house he's building at Strawford? It's on the way to Hartford. Says that one day his son will be the Chinese ambassador here, and he wants him to have a house worthy of his position. That's what he told Stott. No, Stott? He's a dud architect who knows it all. A weird little devil who looks as if he might have been clever with a different kind of brain. Stott laid out the groundwork, sort of Chinese temple with 2 enormous concrete pillars that are going to stand halfway down the drive. The pillar of cheerful memories and the pillar of grateful hearts, that's what he's going to call them. Stott thought it was heathenish and wondered if the bishop would like it. Yes, you ought to see that place, Tab. No, it isn't built. Yealing has nothing but chink labor. The secretary of the Builders' Union went to see him about it. Yealing said his ancestors had a union of their own which put the bar upon non-Taoist labor. Taoism? I hate to wade into the foaming torrent of your eloquence, said Tab gently. But how did you come to meet Stott? Same lodge, said Jacques. It's not for me to talk down a brother craftsman. Are you one of us, by the way? Tab shook his head. Ought to be. Get a little respect for authority into your system. As I was saying, I don't want to knock Stott, but he's not everybody's meat. Go and see the temple, or whatever it is, Tab. Might be a good story. On the first idle day he had, Tab took his motorcycle and went out to Strawford. He was not entirely without hope that he would see Ursula. Her house was only 7 miles beyond Strawford Hill, and he had reason to know that she had withdrawn herself to a country home. In a letter telling this, she had told him in so many words that when she wanted him, she would send for him. He saw the building from a distance. He had noticed it before. It was hardly possible to miss seeing it, for it stood on the crest of one of the few hills the country boasted. The walls were half finished, and heavy wooden uprights rose like the palings of a fence above the queerly laid courses, and one of the pillars already lifted its lofty head. It flanked on one side a broad pathway which was half the width of the house, and stood some 50 feet above the ground, being crowned by a small stone dragon. Tab wondered if this was a pillar of grateful hearts, or that which stood or would stand for cheerful memories. Its diameter must have been fully 5 feet. Near at hand was one of the wooden molds in which it was cast, and a Chinese workman was scraping the interior. Tab walked through a break in the low hedge which separated Yealing's new home from the road, and now stood regarding with interest the activities of the blue-bloused workmen. The industry was remarkable. Whether they were running bricks and mortar, or cutting out the garden, already taking shape, or walling up the terraces, they moved quickly, untiringly, wholly absorbed in their occupations. Never once did they stop to lean upon their spades and picks to discuss the chances of the new administration, or to tell one another how Milligan got his black eye. Nobody seemed to notice Tab. He strolled further into the land, and there was none to challenge his right. A gang of men were gravelling and rolling the broad path, and one of these said something which sent the others into a fit of the chittering laughter which was peculiar to the East. Tab wondered what was a joke. Turning to walk back to the road, he saw that a car had stopped at the break in the hedge, and his heart gave a leap, for its occupant was Ursula. "What do you think of it?" she asked. "It's going to be rather wonderful. How do you like the idea of having a Chinaman for a neighbor?" "I forgot. You rather like the Chinese?" "Yes," she said shortly. "There could be worse neighbors than Ye Ling. You know him?" He wondered if she would deny acquaintance or evade the question. "Very well," she said calmly. "He's a proprietor of Golden Roof. I often dine there. You know him too?" "Slightly," said Tab, looking back at the unfinished house. "He must be rich." "I don't know. One never really knows what money is required to build a place like this. The labor is cheap, and it seems a very simple kind of house." And then with a wave of her hand she drove off. She might at least have asked him to lunch, he thought indignantly. A week went past, a drab week for a discontented Tab Holland, for now there was neither a likelihood of nor an excuse for a chance meeting. A sedative week for hiding Walters. References to the murders seldom appeared now in the newspapers, and he had found a man who had offered to get him a job as a steward on an outward-bound liner. A week of drug sleep for a besotted man curled up on a mattress at the top of Yo Lenthor's house. But for Inspector Carver, an exceptionally busy week, though there was no newspaper record of his activities. Tab no longer spent his evenings at home. The flat seemed horribly empty now that the lovesick Rex had gone. He had had a radio from him saying that he was improved in health. The message was cheerful enough, so that Ursula's refusal could not have bitten very hard. By the end of the week, life had become an intolerable dreariness, and to make matters worse, nothing was happening in the great world that called for Tab's intervention and interest. He was in that condition of utter boredom when there happened the first of those remarkable incidents which in his official account of the case Inspector Carver refers to as a second activity. The flats, one of which Tab occupied, had originally been apartments in a private house. With little structural alterations, they had been turned into self-contained suites. On each of the landings was a door of one of the 4 flats. Admission to the house was by the front door, and the landlord had so arranged matters that, whilst the key of each flat was different, all keys opened the street door. It was therefore possible to go in and out without observation, unless by chance one of the other tenants happened to be on the stairs or in the passageway at the time. On Saturday night, Tab knew he would be alone in the house. The other 3 tenants invariably spent the weekend out of town. One was a middle-aged musician who lived on the top floor. Beneath him was a young couple engaged in literary work. Then came Tab's flat, and the ground-floor suite was occupied by a man whose profession was unknown, but who was generally believed to be connected with an advertising agency. He was seldom at home, and Tab had only seen him once. The Saturday night happened to be the occasion of an annual dinner of his club, and Tab dressed and went out early, spent a mildly exhilarating evening, and returned home at 12:30. There was nothing in first appearance to suggest that anything unusual had happened in his absence, except that the lights in his sitting room were burning, and he had switched them off before he went out. His first impression was that the waste of current was due to his own carelessness, but when he recalled very clearly that he had turned out the light and closed the sitting room door before he went out. Now the sitting room door was open, as also was the door of Rex's old room. The end of chapter 15.